Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
Respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I would ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
WESN.
One of the interesting things about current events and news is that certain stories tend to dominate the headlines, like COVID, and like during the pandemic, we seem to forget that other things could happen. The rest of the world doesn't hit pause out of courtesy, as though this is driving on a single lane road and you're coming off of a side street and you need to make way, you don't have right of way, so you have to let them pass before you could make your turn. So while COVID happened, of course, things like diabetes, things like obesity, that still persisted within our population. Those things were still factors to our overall general health. And of course, while the fires are raging in California, other parts of the world will also see tragedy. That's not to say that what's going on there isn't unfortunate, and we should not try to do whatever little we can from our part of the world, even if it's just as minor as some people might ridicule the whole notion of thoughts and prayers. But at the very least, it's not as though we're in a position to do anything about that, but we should at least have a general sentiment of understanding and compassion. Now, while politics with regard to the political parties gearing up to election and various situations with regards to who's going to be the leader, who's not going to be the leader, how you select the leader, not just for the PNM, also for the COP, and there's still, to some extent, indirectly, the whole dissidence and leadership of the UNC is kind of brought back, at least in the public sphere, this morning, I believe. While all that's going on, while we have a state of emergency that most of the population might not necessarily appreciate and feel, and other members of the population might be feeling, whether it is justifiably so or unjustifiably so, the courts will have to sort that out at a later date, unfortunately, to some extent anyway. Well, we need to remember that we exist in 2025. I almost said 2024. I haven't made that mistake yet, I think. At least, maybe I did it once at the very, very beginning. 2025, where society has progressed, some for the better, some for the worse. And now, of course, the Equal Opportunity Commission has brought the question to the Parliament's Human Rights, Equality and Diversity Committee, the question of what is gender? Now, I'm not going to say what I think it should be and how they should define it, except to say I think it should be done in an objective manner and not left to subjective interpretation. And what does that mean? Well, if you're willing to acknowledge any sort of arbitrary number of genders today, what's to stop it from growing tomorrow? That was one of the issues I had with the whole political side of the gender debate that you would see in foreign countries. I understand that people might not conform to social norms, but what should and should not get legal protection is a different story. And then to what should and should get social consideration is another conversation, and so on and so on. One of the things about this issue is really and truly the scientific literature on it is very much lacking. And that means it's left to societies and politicians to kind of figure it out. Because to some extent, you can't necessarily deny people of how they want to live, as long as it does not interfere with the rest of us. And as long as it is, with regards to certain things, practical. You may want to live a certain way, that's fine, I have no problem with that. With regards to healthcare, it's not always practical. You could ask a medical doctor what I mean by that. But of course now with the Equal Opportunity Commission and even the labor in the country, whether it's the industrial court, labor unions, employers in general, these things apparently was, the issue of gender was kind of left alone up to the individuals, and now we've reached the point where perhaps we need the country to take a more affirmative stance to treat with the questions of 2025. What works for us? What do we need to do? To some extent, what do HR practices need to do to evolve? This is a heavy question because our society, as conservative as it is, will probably have significant pushback, at least in some circles, with regards to topics like this. Whereas certain corporate citizens may be tempted to try to follow the trends that they see abroad, despite the fact that those trends are to some extent reversing, at least maybe from some of the more extreme positions. They're not completely reversing, and maybe they shouldn't. Whereas certain corporate citizens of the country have ties abroad, and they may already be informed by their international stakeholders, management, authorities, central figures, what have you. Regardless of what the rest of the world wants to make of this situation, we need to figure out how we want to treat with it. And to some extent, we need to sort of define what the debate is first in TNT. One of the major, not questions, but issues that we have is, we want to take issues from abroad and kind of transpose it or import it wholesale down here. Racial issues that happen in America are not the same thing of the racial issues that happen in TNT. To some extent, they have racial politics, but they also have racial issues outside of politics. And the dynamics that they have with a different racial demographic than we do, significantly different, means that their issues don't really help inform us on our issues. And it's the same thing here with any sort of question of gender and gender identity. We need to define what it is when we speak about it, what that means for us legally. And again, I'd like to highlight, just because we need to define certain things legally doesn't then mean that that's how it should necessarily be socially. To some extent, we are already accustomed to that. Not everything that we do is defined by law. We have customs and habits that are unique to us. And what is good for one level is not necessarily the best for the other. And of course, then again, to some extent, I do wonder how many trainees have even thought of this question with regards to how they will treat these things personally. And therein lies another level which cannot really be policed, cannot really be standardized. It could only be based on education, compassion, biases, opinion. Are we ready for that? I have no idea. I am kind of looking at this whole situation, and I'm not necessarily looking forward to where the conversation could go. That's one of the reasons why I've never necessarily pushed for these conversations to happen, because I have no way of knowing if the population is ready or not to have it. And if the population is not ready, it could be a case where it ends up with a very negative outcome. And I'm using these terms not to say that a certain outcome is negative or not. I'm using open-ended terms to try to keep the conversation open and generalized, to understand that it's not about having an agenda one way or the other. If that's the case, to some extent, perhaps it's disingenuous, whatever stance you take. But rather to understand that, look, we're going to come to a point now where many other bigger, technically more mature and developed countries than our own, when faced with these conversations initially, for all intents and purposes, they failed at it. And they have yet to figure out where is the true balance point on those various spectrums: legal, social, personal, and professional, I guess you could say. You could even separate that there. They aren't the same things. They require different things. And certain things may be practical for some and not for others. And certain things might be reasonable for some and not for others. Medical, that's a whole other dimension that the medical community around the world, I don't think, not the academic social science, but rather the biological medical community, the ones that actually have to fix you in case anything goes wrong. That part of medicine has not necessarily said anything about this. And that is probably one of the areas that needs to be outspoken the most with regards to what they need, with regards of the reality of their work when dealing with individuals. That ultimately, to some extent, we need to understand that a human body is far more diverse than we think and far more the same than we think, and yet it is and it isn't. It's a conversation that might honestly be more complicated than our society wants to handle right now. People individually can be smart. As a collective, the more complex the situation, the harder it is to sort out. But the law might push forward, or they might pump the brakes and wait and see. Who knows where it's going to go? And maybe it would be bad to adopt a wait-and-see approach and to stall having this conversation any further. But I will have to wait and see how it works out. Sure, Michael Smollett, this is Talking Point at WESN, the content capital. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll start up today's daily review. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain. SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
Welcome back to Talking Point on WSN, the content capital. And now, of course, the ongoing political sagas continue. So more on those stories and more. Let's kick off today's Daily Review. So, we have received news that the People's National Movement, starting off with them and their whole succession planning, has reached the stage that, to be honest, I thought they reached last week, at the start of last week. It took an extra week. I'm not entirely sure why it took an extra week, but now it has been reported that Minister of Energy and Energy Industry, Stuart Young, has the support of all 21 MPs, PNM MPs, with regards to being the new Prime Minister once Dr. Keith Rowley steps down. 21 MPs, reportedly, of course, because Lisa Morris Jr. will not be replaced, I believe, until the next general election. So, the party had a general council meeting. It met, it talked amongst themselves, and seemingly everyone seems to be satisfied with what's going on. There are pictures, of course, of Stuart Young with Party General Secretary, Minister of Youth and anyway, Foster Cummings. I don't know why I'm forgetting his specific title all of a sudden. And the General Secretary seems as though he is part of the, I guess you could say, the optics of trying to appear united. Now, it's important to note that while there seemingly were those reportedly, and the assumption is it hasn't necessarily been spelled out and confirmed, right? But there were 9 people who did not vote for Stuart Young in the initial poll. There were 9 people who did not want to sign the letter to the president. And now it is believed that those 9 individuals have decided to support Stuart Young. No one is going to have any more, well, outspoken outbursts. And when they decided not to sign the letter, it's important to know that they didn't necessarily make a big public ordeal out of it, come out saying all kind of things about this is not democratic and blah, 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 etc., etc. They kept it quiet, which left them room now to say, and the wording was that, well, they just wanted to wait for the General Council meeting. They did not voice their displeasure. They did not voice the details of their opinion. All we knew for certain was that 9 did not vote for him in the initial caucus, and then 9 held out from giving their, I guess, symbolically final stamp of approval, even though they indicated the assumption would have been they would have been on board once the initial caucus, Stuart Young won 11-9. So the assumption, I believe, would have been, all right, we'll vote, and whoever wins the most votes, that's who we're all going to support. But then the whole question of the political leader apparently came up, and everybody wanted to pump the brakes, hold the fort. Now, like I said, it seems as though they have reached the point that I assumed they were at the start of last week or throughout last weekend, because I thought they would have discussed all of this then. I don't necessarily know why, and perhaps there's a lot that we don't know. Perhaps the difference between the two sides of the situation was not about the political leadership per se, but it was about picking Stuart over Penny. I don't know. But it seems as though the party's leadership is content with Dr. Keith Rowley moving forward as political leader. Now, some of the other voices in the situation, they have also come out and essentially given a positive message. Jennifer Baptiste-Primus has basically said the meeting was very productive. She's looking forward to a bright future for the party. She has expressed her concerns about the process. Apparently, she spoke directly to, I believe, the Prime Minister. And it seems as though they were able to agree on the current situation, of which we technically still only have, we, the public, have incomplete information over, right? At the end of the day, we agreed that the Honorable Prime Minister and political leader of the party have certain actions to take. The General Council agreed on a consensus that we support Stuart Young as the next Prime Minister. We intend to work together in order to continue to present Trinidad and Tobago good governance. The General Council had its opportunity in our full democracy to say what it wished. There was full support, and in those circumstances, I am very satisfied that Stuart Young, who I support personally, into the position of Prime Minister, that the proposed nomination is all well and good. So it seems as though, and to some extent, some people might think, she's changing her tune. She did not necessarily say anything that then locked her into an anti-Stuart Young position. So I could appreciate that her concerns were about the process, and she seemingly is content with regards to how the process is going now. Again, let me remind you, we don't know what is the whole strategy with regards to the political leadership and who is going to be technically leading the party during the election, and who will be the person the public will be, who will be presented to the public to say, if you vote us in, this is the person who's going to be Prime Minister. Is it going to be Stuart Young? We don't know that yet. Robert LaHunt also came out to speak, to throw his support behind Stuart Young as Prime Minister. It's a WhatsApp comment to one of the daily newspapers. Quote, "I will continue to work in the interest of the party and the country and wish Mr. Young success as he gets set to lead the government." In that respect, one has to accept the decision even if you don't agree with it. This is democracy at work. And things like this make me think that the PNM actually did have to go through an internal exercise where they were able, not that everybody 100% supported it, but people were able to voice their concerns, and Stuart Young potentially has enough support in the party, the majority support, to at the very least be Prime Minister right now in the interim until the elections have to be called, in which he will have to call those elections. But again, it does not necessarily directly answer or affirmatively answer the question, is he leading the PNM into the elections? Will he be campaigning as the political leader of the PNM? Because, well, not as the political leader. Will he be campaigning as the potential candidate unofficially, because we don't have an official candidate position, as Prime Minister? Because the assumption currently is Dr. Keith Rowley will be political leader until September. So if the election is before September, then Stuart Young's political position in the campaign trail, if he is to be considered to be the guy that will be selected as Prime Minister, will technically kind of be unofficial. If the elections are after September, well then potentially the party can then go through what would be a rushed exercise, because the elections have to be by November and they will be doing it in September. Select their political leader, potentially vote for Stuart Young so that he could lead the party in a more conventional manner. Meanwhile, of course, there is the other person, Penelope Beckles. She did not necessarily say anything. Her supporters basically are reported of saying that they are disappointed. One speaking to one of our daily newspapers saying she doesn't necessarily know Stuart Young personally, but she was disappointed because she believes in Penny, right? And she thinks, she called on the General Council to have a little more respect for black women, as a quote. I'm not entirely too sure exactly why she felt that black women in the PNM were being disrespected, right? But part of it is she thinks that Penelope Beckles, this is one of a supporter, this is not Penny herself, but a supporter, believes that Minister Beckles is better connected to the ground, to the grassroots, and does not like the fact that potentially, because she was not a bacchanalist, there is a sense by some supporters that that's why she didn't necessarily get support. Now, to be honest, I don't necessarily think that was a consideration. At least it wouldn't be for me, because one of the other people who I thought could have gotten consideration is also not a bacchanalist, and I'll leave that there. All that being said, the question is, or rather, let me rephrase. We don't know affirmatively if Stuart Young is going to be the prime ministerial candidate, to make up a phrase, for the PNM in the general elections. Now, he is better positioned today than last week, and he has the inside track to be the next political leader of the PNM. And as someone who is half Chinese, Minister Young is, I believe, half Chinese, I am not someone who is, I need to see a half Chinese man get voted into, or woman, be voted as Prime Minister of the country so that I could feel validated by my race. That whole participation trophy thing is not my cup of tea. I would like to see that the political, racial dynamics of the country change, and this would be a change. And to some extent, sometimes, it doesn't necessarily matter how you got there, because the act of getting there will desensitize the situation, whoever is the first. But the flip side is sometimes if the first ain't good, it could resensitize the situation moving forward when the population says, you see, that's why we don't do certain things. So to some extent, I'm not necessarily looking at it in that lens, but the racial lens is going to be there. And I'm going to hope that as one of the first situations where the racial norms in political leadership of our two longest standing political parties, it being breached or changed or having a candidate that goes against those norms, I'll see it as a positive, but I'm not banking on it. It's not a case where I need it to happen. I need this ceiling. I don't want to say glass ceiling, but you know what I mean. I don't need it to happen for the sake of it happening. I need it to happen if he's a good candidate. And therein lies the other question. How many people think Stuart Young is a good candidate? Because unofficially, this is the guy right now. We all suspected that the current Prime Minister and political leader of PNM wanted Stuart Young to be the guy. And it seems as though they're doing everything they can to control how that information comes out so that they could control the narrative and prevent any negative backlash. But at the end of the day, people have started even before this month, even before last month, I think a couple months ago, 3 months ago, I can't remember exactly when, to essentially identify, whether rightfully or wrongfully, that there are elements in the party that want Stuart Young to be the next leader, for whatever reason, whether it's the financiers, whether it's because they think he is the most technically skilled, because he is the minister of everything, so to some extent, who in the party will be better qualified? It's between him or who we think might be a better leader / negotiator. When it comes to actual practical get things done, there are not a lot of ministers who technically would qualify higher than Stuart Young. Now, you might say that Stuart Young doesn't qualify that high. That doesn't mean that what I said is wrong. Think about it for a second. Remember, sometimes we have to grade politicians on a curve. But I don't like the fact. I like the move when I thought it settled the issue of not having the potential of the party going up for the elections and then picking the political leader after the elections. But it seems that my hopes and dreams essentially are shattered, and the PNM are going into this situation where they might end up doing that. We don't know for sure, and I would like clarification. Maybe you might say, who is Sean Michael Small to ask for clarification? I'm not demanding it. I would like it. I think it would be beneficial. I think it would look better optically. But that's my opinion. I don't know what considerations they have behind the scenes. All I know is, not only am I questioning what's going on exactly with the political leadership of the party as it relates to the next general election, but then also, why is it that whatever they did on Sunday, at the very least, could not have been done last week? We don't know how true it is, but I really, as much as you see, I could believe what happened recently, and the fact that Jennifer Primus and Robert LaHunt and everybody, General Secretary Foster, everybody is more or less rallying behind Stuart Young now, right? And I could believe that to be the case because I didn't see this to be something that would have been difficult and unreasonable to happen. That's why I thought it happened last week. Don't know why it seemed as though they tried to pull a fast one on people last week, and it's almost like if, and this is a recurring thing, they try to shortcut the process, it doesn't work, and then they have to actually go through the process to get it done. And then it works fine. So why circumvent things when they had the meritless situation to keep Gary Griffith off of the list, except they had to redo the situation and put him back on the list anyway. The whole situation with the Auditor General reports, to circumvent it, now it's gone to the Privy Council, who basically said, hey, Minister of Finance, you were wrong. We have to sort this out the right way. I don't understand what is it, and this is not unique to the PNM, but what is it with politicians wanting to rush things through the wrong way, circumvent the proper procedure or the rules and regulations? Maybe it's because that's what they're accustomed to some extent. There's implications there that I won't point to. But why do they have to do that? Why is it for this situation they couldn't just get it right the first time? Before they wanted to speak to the public, before they wanted to make declarations, before they wanted to put their PR machine behind it. Why they couldn't just figure it out the first time and not present any appearance of drama? Because to some extent, not everybody in the population is going to forget it. All right. Of course, to follow up with this story, we have the opposition's response, a strong response, one that I don't know completely if I agree with or not. The opposition leader, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, she has a lot of strong quotes on this. I didn't even know, I had to figure out what to make the title, and I was trying to use a quote, and no quote stand out as being directly usable in its entirety. It was too long. and then to really encompass everything that she said. But from saying that this whole thing was a vulgar and obscene charade aimed at hoodwinking a desperate, traumatized nation into believing that unity was achieved among the lazy, greedy, incompetent, warring members of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley's government, that's just one quote, right? Another quote, the coronation has been a nail in the cross for democracy in the party's ongoing soap opera of chaos and incompetence. And essentially, one of the other things that she said was words to the effect of, Stuart Young cannot fix TNT. There's no MP in the PNM that could fix TNT. And I believe one of the things she pointed to is the crime situation. Now, here's the thing. I would have appreciated if she weren't, because you might agree with her, but there's a difference between the man on the street saying these things and someone who's of high office saying these things. Look at the Privy Council. Sometimes less is more, right? We kind of heard what the Privy Council had to say to the government with regards to the Auditor General and that court matter, and then the other court matter that happened after where Lady Simler's name came up twice, right? I can't remember what the second matter was. She didn't necessarily go all out like and direct and pointed like what the opposition leader did, but the message, those who could interpret reasonably, you know, essentially for a judge of the highest court of appeal of any nation to say things like that, to call out a sitting minister, that's not a small thing, right? This is the opposition leader. The office carries weight, and to some extent, if you do such pointed absolute speaking terms, if you use such language, it loses some of the gravitas of the office, it loses some of the weight. And then you bring up parts of the debate that I think people could then use to pick apart your position. Because one of the things that the opposition leader points to is the escalating crime situation in the last 10 years. I believe that might be one of the quotes, something, or at least there was something about the last 10 years, or the country not doing so well in the last 10 years. But I believe it was crime. And the reason why I didn't agree with that aspect of what you were saying was, one could argue, at the very least, our crime situation can be traced, at the very least, back to the Patrick Manning administration. So I'm not saying back to her administration. Don't mind there's all of the accusations of corruption and life support and all of that. But then, no, go further. The last Patrick Manning administration, where we had all those community leader things and talking to community leaders and all of that jazz. Now, you could potentially go even further to the last Basil Pandey administration and then the Manning administration before and the Pandey administration before, what have you, right, with regards to how crime was treated. Because this is a situation that is longer than 10 years. So when you use strong language and then you want to make claims, at some point it starts to seem disingenuous because you want to insulate yourself from any of the blame. You want to insulate yourself from any of the responsibility to say, well, no, the problem started in the last 10 years. Whereas the fact of the matter is, I think anyone reasonably would acknowledge that it happened even before your time. And the fact that that's how you want to frame it makes it reasonable, or it would be unreasonable for in my opinion, to consider that you're not doing it in a biased way. You're not framing your statements with a context that is biased. And then it's kind of hard for me to take you seriously past that point. And this is one of the issues I have with the opposition, kind of just saying anything that they could come up with that sounds strong. Because when it's strong, then you leave no room to backtrack if it's not all correct or accurate. And more importantly, when Dr. Keith Rowley said certain things as opposition leader, you yourself have been able to hit him back with his own words. But more importantly, the lack of grace in some of these messagings coming from certain members of the opposition, it really turns me off personally, and I don't know to what extent it turns off other people. Similar to when the Prime Minister says certain things, certain vulgar things in the past, particularly in the first couple of years of his administration, right? I'm not in your bedroom. A woman is like a golf course. Those things turn people off, not just of the Prime Minister himself, but also of the issues that he was speaking about at hand. Important issues. A golf course is like a woman. I can't remember what the quote is. It's not something that I would care to remember fully, so forgive me if I misquoted that last one. And now to say that Stuart Young, one of the things is that he himself, Stuart Young, is vulgar and obscene. Or the implication, because this is a vulgar and obscene charade. I don't know why you want to call it that way, because, again, selecting Stuart Young as Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley stepping down, like, one, I don't necessarily view it as a charade per se, because it's not like Stuart Young is going to be the puppet for Dr. Rowley to continue to exercise power. Once he steps down as Prime Minister, his power becomes very limited, and then it's only a matter of time before he has to give up the position of political leader. Unless something really goes wrong and the party supporters thrust him back into the role and he accepts it. And then they force the issue of him to continue to be political leader / Prime Minister. But next election, he ain't going up for office, so that window is very small for anything that will happen. Vulgar and obscene. Is it because of Stuart Young's comments and what he's, one of the more famous things that he's done in recent memory? Well, to some extent, I hate to say this, but not only, I mean, one could argue his current boss, the guy who is tapping him to be his replacement, has said similar things at times, and we don't like it, but hey, the country continued moving forward, right? It didn't necessarily affect the price of bread, despite the fact that we really, really, really would have preferred it not happening. But this is par for the course of political language at the end of the day. There are individuals in the UNC who use similar language. So if we want to disqualify the situation as being vulgar and obscene because of the temperaments and the languages of those involved, then maybe we should look at all of our politicians and have a general purge. Not violent purge, but, you know, just move on from the bacchanalists. Hey, look at that, an argument perhaps for politicians with the temperament of Penelope Beckles and others. Pot calling kettle black, perhaps. I know some people don't like equating the UNC and the PNM, but the politicians kind of have similar behavior patterns that is transcendent beyond party lines. Many of the moderate voters see it that way. So even you could disagree with me all you want, but at the end of the day, our low voter turnout tends to suggest that's how a lot of the people see it. I hope and wish communication in the political space becomes more professional. I just don't know when it will start. At this point, I don't care who starts it off. Ironically, I made mention a week or two ago that in some ways, Gary Griffith, at the very least, can identify some of the basic functions better than many of the leading politicians in Parliament. And if you don't like Gary Griffith, I'll just say this. What I said is not necessarily wrong, and that should give you reason to pause. What you're pausing about, I won't spell it out for you. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll welcome our guest. Stay tuned to Talkingpoint on WSN. We'll be right back after this.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drumheads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we cannot a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man is being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
And we're back on talking about the WESN, the Connect Capital. And as we do at the start of the week, usually, not always, but usually, we have our media ambassador from the TTPS, one of the few public relation efforts in the nation that works, not always, well, easily, but it does work. And we have, of course, our media ambassador, ASP Arun. Good morning.
you and the members of the audience and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago.
And of course, we have the state of emergency right now.
Right, so.
And I do believe that, so according to your superiors, from the police's perspective, everything is going well?
Yeah, everything works out. It's working out well. We want to continue to reach out to the members of Trinidad and Tobago to cooperate with the officers on the ground as they conduct their duties, their exercises, their roadblocks, their stop and searches, their seizures. Continue. We've had a lot of good feedback from members of the public indicating that officers are treating them well and they are doing what they're supposed to do. We haven't really had any complaints to talk about. So,
is this one of those cases where, you know, finally, like, you know, the leadership's message, everybody kind of understands what the mission is?
I think indirectly, yes, because what you have is a state of emergency and everybody wants to do what they're supposed to do to make sure that it develops well.
Yeah.
So you have citizens doing their best to comply with the instructions of the officers, and you have the officers doing their best to support the rights of citizens. So, you know, and it is a state of emergency. So indirectly it has caused a great response from both areas.
Now, one of the things is that so far, at least, carnival promoters have not had any issues, it seems, with the state of emergency.
Yeah.
There are some concerns about the foreign aspect, but that's not necessarily in purview of the TTPS. Right. But with regards to the effects, does it seem as though I'm kind of, it's a weird situation to be in because we're in a state of emergency, but we still have facts, we still have partying, we still have high degrees of alcohol consumption, we still have a lot of the risks that would have associated with carnival that hasn't been curtailed. Has the TTPS been able to do anything special to deal with that, or is it a case where, look, we don't need to do anything special, we just need to do what we usually do and this will work out?
No. It's a state of emergency during the carnival period. What you would see is, again, a heightened response by the police officers using the powers of the SOE. So you would have the major roadblocks and whatnot continuing and even enhanced because you have carnival fetes. So you'll have officers out there more as opposed to directly involved with fetes and involved with carnival activities. And just the mere patrols, you'll have them out more doing exercises and conducting it. So there may be a greater impact to the members as the public because of the amount of policing duties that we'll be performing during the carnival period. So it's an additional extra effort on behalf of the police officers. And officers are being called off leave. I think the Commissioner mentioned that recently. And she's calling out officers off leave because one of the restrictions with an SOE is that you can't go on, you can't proceed on vacation.
Yeah, this is, because we actually spoke to Ashraf on Friday. This is normal. Like you call an SOE, and then you basically say, all right, everybody on leave.
Officers understand that they have to work overtime. It's what we call the exigencies service, and you may not even be paid for the overtime. So. And this is a case where you can't blame the commissioner because it's not like she is like, hey, schedule your vacation around these dates because we're going to have a state of emergency. No.
She's like,
we understand, the TTPS and its members fully understand that the president has issued a document indicating there's a state of emergency, so we have to comply with it. So we understand that in these cases, we must be out there.
In the FETs, of course, police officers, FET promoters still have to get officers for security, is that correct?
Of course, that's a separate issue. That's a paid extra duty.
But these officers, technically, they will also operate with the powers, the extra powers.
Yeah, whether on or off duty, the officers have the powers to exercise it during a state of emergency.
So to some extent, this actually makes the FETs even arguably safer.
It should be safer, yes. It should.
So now, one of the things is, among your colleagues, has there been any voicing of concerns with regards to the elevated threat levels to various arms of the state? Could you tell us, like, is there anything you could tell us with regards to protection for prosecutors, judiciary, or prison officers? Because it seems as though there's a certain high level of criminal element that is still going to operate. The murder rate is significantly less. Well, it was at one point less than one a day, but I think we're inching back up to that one a day. At least it's not twice a day, 2 murders a day. But anything you could tell us on those fronts?
Well, in terms of the security for the judiciary, if we are called upon to provide the judiciary with security, we would be providing the judiciary with security. I'm not at that level to indicate if that was done at all.
Right.
But if called upon, the officers understand that they have to do it, they would be doing it. And we have units specifically designed to provide safety to those judiciary officers. What was the other issue you mentioned?
Just with the safety and security, I can't remember myself, you know. But also, is there any concern? Because this is one of my concerns. So I don't know if you could speak on this. Now, I understand there have been maybe 500 to 600 arrests so far, which personally, that's not necessarily what I'm looking out for. I could appreciate that. Yes, it would be good that you could potentially charge some gang members and reasonable charges, right? Not charges that will then turn into lawsuits in the future.
Right.
So, but to some extent, I have no way of judging that now, right? I kind of have to wait and see how that unfolds, like the last SOE. But with regards to illegal guns being confiscated, we've gotten 30 guns. There's a part of me that wants to say 30 guns, that's not a small number, but then there's another part of me that wants to say as well, given the estimates of how many illegal guns should be floating around, 30 might not even be 1 percentage point.
Well, 30 is an excellent number when you look at the time of the year, the period we have so far. It's a great number. And it's not that the TTPS has all the information and covers all the areas that the firearms come in. So you have to understand, based on our parameters, we are using the intelligence provided by members of the public and whoever else to conduct these exercises and to get these firearms off the streets. So it's the stop and search, it's the information that we gather and the intelligence we pay to those information gathered so that we could conduct exercises and seize those firearms. And 30 should be a great number when you look at the period of time for the year thus far.
I mean, all right, fair enough. It's been, what, 14 days of an SOE?
Yeah.
So to some extent, I could appreciate that if you want to say, okay, 30 firearms in 14 days, assuming that then if we could continue with this rate, we could maybe get a couple hundred.
And you have a greater number of ammunition and drugs, narcotics being seized as well. On the issue of the firearms, I just want to remind members of the public that there is no operational gun amnesty at this time.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
So you cannot find a firearm and take it to the police station. You call the police. So get in touch. Yeah, because
so if I find a firearm, don't touch it.
Well, no. The correct thing to do is to call the police or the local police station or 555, or if you want to remain anonymous, you call 800 tips or 555. If you wish to report it directly to a station.
I would argue it's kind of tricky if you want to remain anonymous because potentially you kind of leave any gun for somebody else to stumble on.
No, but it's your choice. It's your choice.
I guess. I understand that. I'm just saying, like, if you want to do the most responsible thing, you're left with a bit of a dilemma. I can't answer it for you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to necessarily leave a gun.
No, but I would not want you to have
pick it up
and then police stop you on the way, and then you're on the way to the police station. It's a strict liability offense, so you would be charged for possession of a firearm.
Even if I call it in? But if I call it in, I probably would be advised not to. All right.
If you call it in, I mean, your intention would be clear. So that's when you're looking at a crime, you look at the intention and the act itself. But in terms of firearm possession, it's a strict liability offense. If we hold you, so you might call the station, and on the way, some other police officers not from the station may hold you with the firearm or somebody else.
Because I could see where, to the average citizen, it might just, you just randomly find a gun wherever, right?
Right.
Let's just say that's the scenario. I don't want to go into, they're probably more complex scenarios, but I don't want to go there yet.
Yeah.
So just say you randomly find a gun somewhere, and for whatever reason, it might just seem more practical. Well, I don't just want to leave it here.
Right. And
right. Is that, because it might, some people might think that's not the responsible thing to do. So, you know, maybe you get a towel or a rag, you wrap it up.
You don't want to be liable to being arrested and charged for possession, because a criminal could easily and arguably say, well, listen, the firearm I have in my waist, I just found it, and I'm on my way to the station. So
I mean, the flip side is, I'm not gonna lie. If I see a gun in some random drain,
right,
like, there's a catch-22. Am I gonna pull out my phone and be like, yes, police? Like, it's almost like I could imagine the arrow on my head, right? You know,
so
like,
there's an intelligent way to have it done, and a reasonable and responsible way to have it done. You call the police. Whether you call them directly to the station, or you call anonymously to 555 or 800 tips, those are the avenues open to the members of the public to have that firearm seized by the police officer. And believe it or not, you most likely will get a quicker response than anything else to get that firearm off the street.
I would just tell members of the public, you have to determine how and where it will be safe to make that phone call. But as ASP Arun said, make the call, don't take it into your own hands.
The moral thing to do is to make a report.
Yes.
The response, it's not totally your duty to do that, in the sense that you saw the firearm and you want to take a chance now to expose yourself to danger. I think self-preservation should fall in here.
Right.
And, you know,
to some extent. Because whether you make the call at the spot, which that's what I was getting to. Like, there's a part of me I was like, that might not be, because then you're kind of just stuck there, right? If you're not going to move it, so you're just stuck there, or you move it yourself, which still has some degree of exposing yourself to the criminal element. Seeing you do this, right? That's
the responsible thing, if there are kids around, and the responsible thing to do is to take up the firearm and secure it until the police come. Then do that.
Right.
Yeah. If you want to be that brave, then go ahead and do that.
But again, it kind of in these kinds of scenarios, it all depends on if you're that brave.
If you're
there
that
are
brave,
risks.
risk involved. To
your personal safety as well.
Correct. And the safest thing to do is contact the police.
Right.
I think that each member society, each member of Trinidad and Tobago should know their local police station number, so that in case, even if police officers come to your door to conduct a search within the SOE or outside the SOE, you can call the local station. Let me say, look, we have callers from Faizabad and Princeton, wherever, and they call, do you know your local station number? So that you can call the police station and say, listen, there are officers at my door, right? The officer is supposed to be in uniform, at least one, because you have plainclothes officers still. There must be an officer in uniform, gray and blue, right? There would be a marked police vehicle, right? So we have decided to we have ensured that these efforts exist, these issues exist, so that we can ensure that you know that these are legitimate police officers. So if you hear banging at your door, you don't go and open it immediately. You converse, listen, I am here, I'm calling the station to make sure you are police officers. May I have your name, your badge number, or can I see your badge number if you want to look at it, if you want to take that risk? You know, you have to be reasonable, practical, and responsible with what you do.
And not be combative when you ask for these
Don't
things.
be combative. There's no need to be combative.
I may bring up this scenario in more detail in the future, but I know of a situation where somebody is, I hate to say this, but at least on the surface, it looks like he's regularly harassed by police officers.
Right.
And he started asking for name and badge number, and then they were kind of just move him along as opposed to continuing doing whatever they're doing.
Right.
So that's just one of the things that, you know, I maybe off air or at a future point, I might bring about you in the future. I asked him for the information, but just to reiterate that it does work, folks, to ask for those things. If it's not legitimate,
especially in the state of emergency, where officers don't have a search warrant, they have been complying with those questions from members of the public.
And even with all I just said, don't think that every officer that approaches you is not legitimate. You know, you ask them, they give it to you. And then you move on. You let them do what they have to do.
In the state of emergency, you'll actually see police officers in marked police vehicles pulling over vehicles they suspect to be not police vehicles. So you would even see that because we are doing a check and balances. So we have instructions not to take it for granted. If we see an unmarked vehicle, or we believe is an unmarked vehicle.
With blue lights?
With blue lights or not. Because unmarked vehicles would have blue lights, right? There are vehicles that we have that are unmarked that may not seem to be police vehicles with blue lights. We have instructions to pull them over and check and make sure that they are police officers.
That was one of the questions that I didn't get to, with regards to both police, but also what we see with the prison service. The state of emergency, the extra powers, to some extent also extends to dealing with those sorts of situations as well. Is that fair to say?
Prison officers?
Yes, well, there's a whole thing with regards to stuff being smuggled into the prisons. So,
Right.
of course, the suspicion is that some prison officers have to be part of it, but I don't know how far, you know, that's
Yeah.
an assumption, right?
Yeah,
and of course...
No, because the Prisons Commission is in charge of the prisons, we wouldn't be able to enter the prisons.
But more importantly, I think there were stuff being done with regards to contraband in the prisons that the police were a part of. So with regards to that,
Okay.
and with regards to internal stuff with the TTBS, the state of emergency, does it apply? Does it give you all...
The powers to enter the prisons?
No, not to enter the prisons, but just extra powers to deal with those situations in general. Yes or no?
No, well, once called upon by the prison service, we would
Right.
have the powers to enter and
Okay.
search. Now, the thing is with the prison service, the commissioner of the prisons is in charge of the prisons. So he gives the officers the authority to come into the prison. There's no search warrant.
Right, okay,
There's
of course.
There's never a search warrant,
Yeah.
or because you are your rights have been suspended at the prison service in terms of being searched and whatnot. Sorry, in the prisons.
Yeah,
as
you
a
don't,
prisoner.
have, you don't have a reasonable
You don't have the
right to privacy.
Correct, to that full length of privacy. So you have officers can come in and conduct searches without a warrant.
Generally speaking, I can't remember with regards to gun amnesties what our historical track record are, but is it safe to say that, you know, it's not necessarily the case where one would, could you say if it would be effective or not, or could you not say?
Well, traditionally and historically, it has not been very effective because Trinidadians don't necessarily... The gun amnesty in other jurisdictions normally work. They normally work because firearms are very available to people in those jurisdictions.
Right.
So they may or may not have a permit for it. So they may buy a firearm from another colleague, another person. They may find a firearms abundant.
Right.
Right. They may have an automatic firearm as opposed to a concealed carry firearm. And in those jurisdictions, they have a gun amnesty and it works. And sometimes they pay people to come and hand over their firearm or any illegal firearm they may have if they don't have a permit for it.
Because sometimes it's not a gang firearm. It might be an illegal gun, but
it might be an illegal gun
but
that
not,
they came into possession with.
Yeah.
And they get an opportunity to hand it over and maybe make some money off of it.
Right, or at least hand it over without worrying
about anything. So in Trinidad, you don't have that same paradigm. You don't have that same issue where people have an abundance of firearms. Most persons that have illegal firearms have it for a particular reason. I would keep it for that particular reason.
Now, I mean, because the estimates for the number of illegal firearms, I think, was over 10,000. I can't remember what the figure was, right? It was said to the press, and it was said to be an intelligence estimate. Not obviously an estimate is not
because they would not be able to have a real figure.
But because I can't remember, but like when you compare our numbers to the firearms per capita in North America, we ain't reached that level yet, right?
No, we definitely haven't reached that level.
Now, has there been, now that we have these state of emergency, one of the things that we spoke about is the fact that, look, if you all get tips, you all can act on it a lot quicker.
Correct.
Has there been more public support and giving information
of course,
during the state of
definitely,
emergency?
because I'm going to take this opportunity to advise members of the public because we've been seeing this. What we're seeing a migration of suspects from locations to other locations.
Yeah.
And one of the recent ones we saw was that this suspect he lived in a hotspot, but he had a stash house in a built-up area in a gated community. And we were able to get certain evidence from that property. So and one of the things is that a neighbor had suspicions of who it was.
Yes.
Right? Well, I say a neighbor, but somebody in the community had suspicions of who he may be. And we again taking this opportunity to ask members of the public, including landlords, be very careful who you rent to. You could have a conversation with your district inspector or sergeant for the station.
Yeah.
They may assist you. I just want to leave it there. But you can, and if you are seeing persons in your community, strange persons in your community, do not take it for granted that these persons may not or may not be suspects in crimes. Take the opportunity. You can call 555, you can call 800 TIPS and give them the information because these agencies collect data first. and they provide us with the data. Sometimes we have a file on a situation.
Right.
And so when we get this information, we have persons to check it out and to ensure that these persons are, whether they are legit or not legitimate persons in your community.
Yeah.
So if you have suspicions, if you see strange people, because now is that time people are going to move. If a state of emergency, they're not going to stick around. They're going to hide. They're going to go to places that they feel are safer for them. So they're going to come into your community. If you see strange people in the community, whether legitimate or illegitimate, make a call. Call 555, call 800-TIPS, provide them with the information. Listen, I'm seeing a strange person. I'd like to inform the police. We will check it out.
But also, from what I understand, gangsters don't necessarily do a great job of kind of hiding themselves.
Not in their community.
Well, even when they're out of their community, they go somewhere else, and one would think they could kind of hide
if they want to
in
know
the anonymity. But
what they would do, if they go to another community and they want to set up operations there, they would make themselves known.
No, but I'm talking when they're not necessarily wherever they go. Like if it's a safe house, if it's a stash house in a gated community.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like, to some extent, from what I understand, they don't necessarily do the best job of hiding the fact that they are...
Sometimes.
Because,
they do. Because what you have also, you have, they move at odd hours.
Right.
So you see the suspicions coming in and whatnot. So not all the time they hide it very well.
And they also can have families and
of course,
and have aspects of normal life.
They have families, they use gated communities at times, in most cases, if they have the money, if they have the wealth,
right,
to hide out in these places. Their families are with them. They are back and forth a lot. And then they
might go to Hyatt.
And they have supplemental families that
they might go to some other hotel. They might go to Tobago.
Yeah.
And as you said, this is one of those things where you're not necessarily telling people what to do.
No.
Right? But you can reach out to the police.
Yeah, reach out to the police. There's a free number, 555-800-TIPS. If you don't want to call your district police and give them the information because you fear that the number comes up on something, then call 550-800-TIPS or call the station district if you feel brave enough and let them know, listen, I'm seeing a strange person in the area and he just moved in. I want to just tell you, it's good information for the district police because they could tap into that information and use it as intelligence in the future. Also,
property owners, if you have an agent renting your place, you might want to kind of like have a talk with your agent on this topic.
And have, yes, of course, and have a conversation. You have suspicions, and if you want to make sure that your legitimate persons are there, have a conversation with your district inspector or sergeant.
I know of one case where someone had concerns that human trafficking might have been done out.
Correct, and we have that. We see it, especially in communities, gated communities, we see signs of human trafficking, prostitution, and drug use and whatnot.
Well, because that's the next thing. The police raid your property, you're the owner on the title.
Yeah.
And
you have a question to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think, ironically, going back to the situation from it wasn't 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago with Stuart Young and the person who was not a stepdaughter or in-law, what have you, caught in a drug sting, but it wasn't in some hot spot. It was somewhere in West Moorings.
Yeah, in the western area.
Yeah. So we can't necessarily take it for granted where these things happen and who buys what and participates in what. We should open up the phone lines with the time that we have left, so you can call in and ask the ASP questions with regards to this whole situation. It's one of those catch-22s, right? We can't necessarily say, oh, it's 100% safe to give information and do this and do that. And what your cousin has a gun of a gangster in your closet, just take it up and call the police. And we're not saying that it's 100% safe, but to some extent, we do need the public support in order to get the information, to find the illegal guns, to find the gangsters and the drugs. And, if I would just say this, I don't know what I would do if I had that question. I hope I would be brave enough to do the right thing. But the phone number's up on your screen. We could have that conversation. You could call in on other things. Of course, there's the whole situation going with the PNM, the whole situation. Well, we don't know exactly how far the situation UNC is going to go. The dissidents are still acknowledged as dissidents in the press this morning or in the last couple of mornings. And of course, there's the whole COP. They also had their political leadership question at least partially answered. So you could call and have your say all on that. Meanwhile, state of emergency. I guess from where you sit, and I assume speaking to your colleagues and stuff, could you, I don't know if you could just give us, what is your sense of the rank and file? Because it seems as though on the ground, it's working out maybe better than most people who had fears would have thought. We don't have any incidents. We've had incidents without a state of emergency, no interaction incidents so far. And quite a lot of arrests, maybe actually, to some extent, the number of arrests are so high, I'm kind of like, I'm surprised by the number of arrests. But with regards to the officers, have the officers been kind of taking it in their stride? Because again,
definitely. The officers have been working tirelessly during the state of emergency up to, I can't say everything, but at the transport branch, we get a number of calls to provide additional vehicles and shop around for vehicles and move around and cut and paste and whatnot. So we have to manage the resources we have. And one of the things we recognize is that these operations are taxing on our resources at this time, but we seem to be doing very well with it so far at the transport branch. What you have with the officers on the field, yes, they are working tirelessly. They have been motivated to get this job done. And they understand their duty at this time is to provide the support to the TTPS, to the executive in terms of executing their duties in roadblocks and exercises. There haven't been much complaints on the ground that I have detected thus far.
Any concern that the fact that I believe the murder rate has now, we are 14 days in, we've now reached 10 murders for the 14-day period?
Well, we saw a very slow progress with the murder rate, and we were hoping that it would have continued during the state of emergency. So hopefully, I think they're debating on it today, if I'm not mistaken. Right. So hopefully, it may continue, and we'll be able to curtail any further progress at the murder rate. And hopefully, we could use the powers that we have now to conduct further exercises and roadblocks and whatnot to further curtail whatever might occur.
There seems to be still issues with home invasions, and it's not just recently, but even at the end of the year. In fact, ironically, one of my issues with people with stricter gun control laws is the fact that, look, you don't need a gun to kill somebody. One of the home invasions that horrified me was the fact that they stabbed the poor woman to death. I don't know why. I would imagine an 84-year-old woman resisting would be very relative, right? How much resistance could it actually be? But home invasions, is it that we see them happening in the day? I believe that case happened in the night, though. And might it be that perhaps home invasions might be the question to bring up curfews? Would curfews be effective at curbing home invasions or not really?
No, curfews would assist to some extent. You could always have the case where somebody does commit a what we call you all call a home invasion or robbery, as we would say. And they would use the opportunity of the curfew to stay indoors and continue the act and just stay inside the person's home. And commit the act of robbery or, as you say, home invasion. So, but the curfew would curtail it to some extent because it would curtail the movement from one place to the other. Right? But we have seen that there are some that are committed during the day, and it is targeted by these brazen criminals. And again, we ask citizens to use every opportunity to protect themselves. The burglar-proofing, the alarms. I recently looked at a robbery in the northern area, and they actually had an alarm for their business. And the suspects ran in, and they were able, because of the homework they did, they were able to tell the employees, don't press the alarm for the siren to go off. So the business place has a siren, a loud alarm. So they did the homework, and they appeared that they knew what they were going into. And they were able to successfully commit the robbery. We do have some leads in that area. We have put up the videos on media. We're hoping to make some breakthroughs with that robbery. But then again, as you mentioned, as you indicated, yes, they are still going on. They are targeted. So we're asking citizens to use whatever they can to ensure that their own safety and the safety of others in their home are provided.
And this goes back to, having adequate security lights.
Definitely.
Secure gates.
Security lights, listen, security lights work. What we've noticed on the ground, I don't know, people trying to save money because of the bill. They have not been using their electricity. Sometimes we go out on reports and we can't find the home because nobody's outside.
Right.
We're on the phone with the victim or the witness, and they're directing us to their home, and they don't even put the lights to the home. So we have fishing.
This is the victim has suffered an incident. I assume that the criminals are not in the house with them.
They're gone.
They're gone.
Yeah.
They call you,
Yeah.
and while they're waiting on you, they decide it's safer if I wait in the darkness.
In the dark. So the lights. So you have a vehicle how do you call it? So you have a property. You have a vehicle downstairs. It's not fenced properly, and there's no lights on.
Right.
Yeah. So these are avenues that criminals utilize to steal your vehicles, rob you of your vehicles. You could see them coming.
Right, but if you have no lights,
if you have no lights on, Trinidadians need to employ or use more lighting in their homes and in their surroundings.
I mean, it's a basic thing, right? Yeah. If someone wants to commit a crime in a well-lit community, there's always a chance that somebody will see this person, this car, they will dress with this, or at the very least have an account that they could give the police, that the police could backtrack. Especially if, well, I saw 3 men in this kind of car, you know, and maybe the car is a stolen car, but at least it's something. At least it's one more obstacle that you're making it too easy if they don't have, because.
And we see this a lot in the rural communities, as opposed to the built-up areas.
Is it that rural communities are even more at risk? Because I think a lot of people think, we're in the country, we're safe.
No, definitely, because your position leaves you liable to the response.
Right.
So if nobody knows you're being robbed, and if you aren't able to make a call out, then the police won't be able to respond in a timely manner.
Yeah, and when it's not built up, your neighbors are further away. They have a less chance of being able to see or intervene.
So protect your property, fence your property, use the bugger-proofing, get the alarms for your homes, the loud alarms. Some companies, some businesses have silent alarms. I would ask that you use the loud alarms, because criminals tend to get scared away and run away when they have the loud alarms.
As
opposed to the silent alarm.
Yeah, because with the silent alarm, yes, it might be more effective to maybe catch the criminals.
Yeah.
But also, they might continue doing whatever they're doing, including inflicting violence, not knowing police is on your way. And police being on your way is not necessarily going to save you, especially if they don't know that the police is on your way.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those catch-22 things. One of the interesting things, people might want to discount what the ASP is saying. You see the police, they want to do their job again. What is light going to do? And what's alarms going to do? But the reason why I say that is...
It's going to minimize your risk.
The reason why I say that is there's a guy, he's made... the YouTube rounds, right? Various podcasts. He's famous for being a Delta Force guy during the War on Terror.
Right.
And one of the things that one of his interviews, he spoke about home security.
Yeah.
And yes, he's armed, he has a handgun, he has a rifle, etc., etc. But he also spoke about things like lights.
Yeah.
Basic things.
Basic things,
and the thing is, this is a guy you would think, he could stand his ground.
Yeah.
Right? He has no compunction about shooting down someone that's invading his house, and he lives in a country where, at least depending on the state, he can do that. Yeah. But he still points out the basic things like cameras, home security system, lights.
Yeah. So, when you look at different types of criminal criminological theories, one of the theories speaks to environmental design.
Yeah.
Environmental design, like the broken window theory, where if there's a broken window, it encourages crime as opposed to...
If everything is...
Yeah, if everything. So you have, like in England, you might not have fences, but you might have pathways and you might have brush, and they're kept at a particular level. So people understand, don't cross the brush because that's my property as opposed to public property.
And then once you do these things and it's well lit,
you're
exposed to the public.
You have the burglar-proofing.
Yeah.
We understand that members of the public do all they're supposed to do and still get robbed and still are targets of crime. But if we do it as a holistically, the numbers would be low.
That's the thing. If you make it harder across the board.
Harder across the board. Let's not make it easy for criminals.
We have Move on the line. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, ASP.
Morning.
I'm not sure if you're still ASP. Anyhow, Sean, I just wanted to clarify something. Last time I called in and I told you that I'm not going to be part of any discussion about who is taking over in the PNM and all the wrangling and things. You told me that you said that it's not to be expected that it's going to be ignored because we would be ignoring the process of governance. I think it's something like that you said. But I think you misunderstood my point. My point was that this is will not waste time to discuss the wrangling of our party, that no matter whoever takes over the running of the party, nothing will happen. Nothing will change. I'm not ignore the processes per se, but I'm just saying that what Trinidadians, in my opinion, humble opinion, a pleb like myself, what Trinidadians need to do is wake up to the fact that you all continue to run down a party that has been in office for 50 years and still hasn't gotten it right. As a matter of fact, I would say that they have gotten it more and more wrong. And that is my point. And to me, it's so clear and logical, but somehow people can't see it. My next point is, ASP, you know, every time I listen to any police officer speak, especially when you talk about call the station if you see something, I have lived where I have lived since 71 years old. I'm not going to call the area, but you know, no officer in the station ever came to me to speak on a normal basis I'm speaking about. I mean, I've had issues where they would have come, right? But I'm saying, as a citizen, as a law-abiding citizen living in this area for 71 years, no officer ever came and checked me to have a discussion with me or nothing like that. And all of that is a problem with the police service, and the police service don't seem to understand that. You can't have long-standing people in communities, in neighborhoods, that the police never try to foster a relationship or a communication level with, you know?
Yeah.
Just the fact that every time I think about that, and here you all talk about it goes right back to my pet peeve, noise. A police service must deal with noise pollution. I don't care how, I don't care how you do it, who you have to, whatever. You all have an obligation, as well as the government, to deal with it. And you all need to find a way to start dealing with it. Imagine in a SAE.
Caller,
People are still being...
I'll have to ask you something there, because we had another caller call in almost as we took your call. So they've been waiting since. Also, the ASP is not able to hear. I will relay what you said to him, but he can't hear currently. I don't know if you could just try and push it in your ear.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Hopefully there's no audio issues there with you. Mova, thank you. I will reiterate your 2 to 3 points to the TPS to the ASP, but we have Dabidi on the line. Good morning, caller, you're on the air.
Good morning, sure, good morning, ASP. I will be short, and I hope the ASP can be. I'm sorry that the ASP cannot hear what I have to say. Somehow, we have a problem with the police. The police just don't listen. They have different communication personnel that go around sharing the ideas and different point of views. You also have station district, what you call that, like a little community unit in each station district. But when the citizens put forward the ideas to the police, they do not follow through with it. The man on the ground has no say. And the police service comes like a dictatorship right now. Sean, I belong, and I'm not scared to say it, I'm not afraid, I'll let you know. I belong to the St. Joseph Community Council. Right? That's the area, that police thing that they have in St. Joseph. Every month you're changing the inspector and they're not having meetings. You know, I really, really don't understand what is going on. And when you bring forth ideas that the community wants to help the police is not following through on it. I could speak for St. Joseph. And that might be a reflection in all communities. The police, and I am a former policeman, the police is hard-headed. Let us go back to the days of what you call real community policing that started here in Trinidad. When last you see a policeman doing school crossing? When last a policeman went into a district and at least spoke and find out exactly who are the criminals? Well, I don't know if it might be safe to do it in certain areas that gangs exist. But there must be some level of communication whereby the citizens shown an ASP that the citizens will have confidence in the police. We must restore that. And it is done simple. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. So I guess you heard what he said.
And he makes a valid point. But rest assured that it does happen in a number of communities where the police officers, when they conduct outreach programs, we do expect people to come to these outreach programs and provide information because it is a risky issue. Yeah. So we would not want persons to come in an open forum and say, listen, there's a drug, a gang member here, there's a drug block here and whatnot. We expect that, you know, you speak to us privately or anonymously, and we would be able to provide, and hopefully you would see some activities with that.
I think, caller, I know that the Tunapuna Council seemingly has a better working relationship with that police station and that district.
As opposed to St. Joseph.
To where you are, yeah.
So
I wouldn't say that's
but
for all
he did
communities.
indicate that he was a member of the community council.
Yes.
And I didn't hear.
He's saying that the inspectors change and once a month they don't have meetings. So it seems as though there's no consistency, there's no initiative to get anything done.
What I would tell him, if he's hearing me, is that although the inspectors and the management may find management changes often, there are what we call staple persons at the station level who remain longer than. So community policing officers exist in every division, and those are the persons you want to reach out to contribute and to assist with those programs.
Well, I mean, I assume he would have done that to some extent.
Right. So if
then
St. Joseph doesn't have a community policing unit, the division has one.
Right.
So you might have one in Bologna as opposed to St. Joseph. And those are the persons you want to reach out to. Especially if your inspectors are being changed every month, as he indicated.
This is one of the interesting things of society. It could be really bad in some places and not so bad in others, right?
Yeah.
And that is unfortunately just how the way. I don't know what else could be suggested for you to do. I think he has a similar general issue.
Yeah.
The caller before said something similar. The caller from Maloney, he had similar complaints where he was like, look, I don't see police in the community. I don't see police fostering relationships and checking up on us.
What community is in?
Somewhere in Mova, right? At least that's how he identifies himself. And then he is also one of the callers that speaks out about noise pollution.
Correct, yeah.
Right?
And we need officers on the ground dealing with all these issues in the community. Unfortunately, and sometimes it does happen where officers are mandated to deal with other issues in crime, more serious crimes. So they're responding to a lot of crimes and dealing with a lot of reports.
Right now, that might be particularly true right now.
Yes, correct. And even domestic violence reports are not open and public, so you may not see them dealing with them. But we do deal with a number of reports, calls for service, domestic violence, serious crimes, as opposed to the officers. So generally you would have enough officers at the station to go into the community and to pay out a foot patrol. So we normally had foot patrols and we normally had officers. So it does exist in other, maybe not more, but it does happen often.
Right, but I hate to say this, but as much as, ironically, there's the executive and then there's people at your level, the mid-level, I guess, and what you all see is not always the reality of the ground level.
Correct, yes. And this is where management needs to keep in touch with the ground. And this is where we have to invest our management skills into what the community expects. And that is why one of the callers brought up an important issue of the outreach, the community council meetings and whatnot. And the commissioner has mandated officers in every station district to conduct at least 2.
I hate to say this, but, and I won't ask you to comment on it, but I'll just say, from what I've seen, it seems as though national security is not immune to the whole, there are people who take it up just for a job.
Yeah.
And then, of course, now is responsibilities like this aren't always met by the people on the ground who have to do the day-to-day work.
Right.
And that is the experience of so many citizens.
Yeah.
So
and what I want to tell you all, because I worked in communities that were really strong with the police in terms of the community outreach. And it was on their effort, not just the police effort, it was on their part that, that they made these strong connections. And what I would like to ask citizens is that whatever station district you belong to, whatever community council you belong to, make that connection. It's an effort on both parts. So where the police may fall, you may strengthen the ties, and you could bring the community together. And it happens often with the outreach, or happens often with the encouragement and the input of the citizens in that community and their want and their needs. And when they go to the station district and they speak to the district inspectors and sergeants and even the community policing officers, they get that buy-in, they get that togetherness, and they get the activities operationalized. So you could see the police operating a lot more in the community.
Now, we're over time, so we'll have to close the show there. But ironically, it kind of touches on what I also want to say to Mova, in a sense of, if it was with regards to making reports, but you're also saying with engagement, we still need to do our part. And if the specific police officer in whatever example doesn't do his part, it's only after we do our part, then, you know, we can add to the reporting, but the police didn't show up. But we can't say, well, we assume the police is not going to show up, that's why we didn't bother calling the police in the first place. That is not fair.
Yeah. I would really like to ask those citizens, including them over, reach out to the officers in that district and ask them to provide the outreach programs. They would definitely do that. To be honest, I have actually heard of the Mova district having community outreach programs. I'm surprised to hear that he hasn't seen that.
Well, maybe he doesn't get to there, isn't as engaged as Dabadi, so he doesn't see it because he's not involved in that aspect.
Probably, yeah.
And to be fair, maybe he should speak to the community, if not to the police.
Mova is one of the areas that does a lot of community outreach. I often speak to because we provide vehicles and whatnot to the community outreach programs. And again, for these days, you would have a lot more exercises, roadblocks.
I hate to say this, but his noise complaints generally get left unheard.
Right.
Basically.
And I would advise him, seeing that he isn't getting the service he requires from the station, go to the inspector or the sergeant in charge of that station. They would definitely make sure that greater effort is paid on the part of the police to deal with the situation of noise pollution. And Mova does have issues with noise pollution.
Yeah. And with that said, caller, if you've done those steps, or if you are going to do those steps, when you do so, you could always call in, give your feedback here. The ASP could then take it and try a different channel. Folks, thanks to the callers, thanks to the ASP Arun for joining me. This is Talking About the WESN, reminding you to remember your allegiance to the Republic. Make today a good day, as Keita will always say, and stay safe. Always remember, it's nice to be nice. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.